It looks like it's recording on my end.
Great. Okay, well, thank you everyone, this small little group, for joining our first speaker series from Lovely Little Einsteins. So the purpose of these speaker series is really to provide an avenue for parents to get together and discuss different things that are happening in our everyday lives revolving around our children. Right now, it's a really unique time for everyone, and we are just as a school trying to offer many different ways that we can be supportive to you and supportive to the kids, and making sure that our mental well-being is a huge priority, especially because we are a community, we're all in this together. So thank you for joining again. And also, if you have any types of things that you want the school to participate in, if there is an event that you might want to hear more about, or some education that you want to see Little Einsteins lead, please feel free to email me, text me. We'd love to just, provide as many and as much resources as we can to you parents. So with that being said, I want to introduce you to Kelli McCarty. She is an old friend of mine. We actually went to the same college way back when, University of San Francisco, and she is currently a certified marriage and family therapist. She also works as a counselor at an elementary school. She's amazing, she's lovely, and she has a lot of amazing insight on what it takes to raise emotionally intelligent kids in 2020. So without further ado, Kelli, I'll leave it to you.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quickly. Get this up and running for us. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, can you guys see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone again, Kelli McCarty. Like Yesenia said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've done outpatient therapy, consulting, that sort of thing. School counselor for a very long time, and now I'm a school counselor at a pre-K through 8th grade in Orange County, California. And I do have 2 children of my own. They are 3 and 6. So I kind of feel like I'm right there with you in the mix of all this, so we can all relate to that. So today we're going to talk about raising emotionally healthy children, specifically in 2020. So when I think about parenting in 2020, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is the pandemic, right? That's the elephant in the room. And you'll notice these pictures on the left here of Reese Witherspoon. She's going January through June, and I think it's like November 6th right now. So you can only imagine what she's feeling and what we're all feeling, right? So I don't know about you, but for me, parenting during the pandemic has been extra stressful. It's meant less childcare because I can't have people coming into the home because I have a high-risk husband, more isolation for me and my kids, increased anxiety about, sickness, spreading germs, that sort of thing, extra thinking. So when we used to get out the door, it's like, do you have your shoes? Do you have your socks? Now it's masks, hand sanitizer, all the things, right, that can kind of contribute to our mental load as parents and moms. And so I think it's been extra challenging, I know, for me. And again, I'm in Orange County, and I just kind of wanted to check in. Would you say that that's the same for Puerto Rico, or how is it going in Puerto Rico with the pandemic and parenting and that sort of thing? Does this sound about the same, or?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to a little bit about it. I think that, the Puerto Rican government in general has done a very good job making sure that everyone is wearing masks and like everywhere you go. And as far as Little Einsteins is concerned, we developed a pretty strict protocol earlier in the summer, where we're constantly having the kids wash their hands. We have UV air purifiers in every single classroom. We're making sure that we're taking the kids' temperatures 2 to 3 times a day. We have drop-off now as opposed to parents coming into the actual facility. So we've done a fairly decent job creating our protocol at the school. With that being said, you're right in that there's a lot more thinking that is involved in being a parent. And so Puerto Ricans in general, despite the fact that we are surrounded by beauty and nature and water and so much clean air, it's still certainly a real big deal here, especially because healthcare, is a little bit more nerve-wracking in a sense where we might not have as much resources as hospitals in the States.
Absolutely. So yeah, you guys are going through some other things. It's almost like it's in the backdrop. It may not be overly consuming, but regardless, it's still always there. So it's definitely made it harder from a parenting perspective. And then again, the elephant in the room, the question I get asked a lot is, how are my kids going to be affected by this pandemic? Is it going to affect their social, emotional, academic growth? And I want to tackle that question and say, in my professional opinion, and based on what I've seen with the kids that I work with and at my school and that sort of thing, and given the fact that we all have pretty young children here, I think we're all in the 0 to 5, 0 to 6 range. I think that particular population of children, they're going to be okay. They're going to be just fine. Now, if you were a middle school parent or a high school parent or older children, this conversation might look a little bit differently. But since I see very fortunate to have young children right now, I think they're going to do just fine. Because what we know, the research is that our children are really resilient, and in some ways they're more adaptable and stronger than us. So I'll say the only caveat there is, and we'll talk about this a lot throughout the presentation, is that they're going to be okay if you're okay, because children get their cues from their parents. So if we have an anxious mom, we typically see an anxiously attached baby or child. So if we're coping with the pandemic good enough, then I think our children are going to be just fine as well. The other point I always talk about with parents, especially millennial moms, which I think most of us are here, is this idea of perfectionism. So we have our Instagram here on the right, Instagram versus real life. And to me, this is also kind of in the backdrop of what it means to be a parent in 2020. We have this drive for perfectionism. We have social media that's really just giving us the best versions of our life and our children. And I think that can really factor in our parenting styles and the decisions that we make as parents, right? So I bring up these 2 points as sort of, again, the backdrop of what's going on in 2020 and how it's unique to us as parents right now. So now let's get into the real meat of this and refocus a bit on our kiddos and how we raise them to be emotionally intelligent.
And
right?
just to interject really quickly, Kelly, I just wanted to make sure that no one was waiting in the waiting room. So if you could just double check.
I think I got her. Yep, someone just popped in.
Okay.
Perfect. I'm just going to, okay. Okay, so we're talking about raising emotionally intelligent children. So first of all, what is emotional intelligence? It's the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathically. And that's going to include self-awareness, empathy, motivation, self-regulation, social skills. All beautiful things that we want in our children, right? We want their IQ, but we want their EQ, all these important skills. So Daniel Goleman was really the author and psychologist who pioneered this, literally wrote the book on emotional intelligence. And really what he found is that these findings discounted IQ as the sole measure of one's ability and successes. So if you see in school, we're teaching to the IQ, we're teaching our math, our science, our English, our STEM, which is beautiful, and that's great. But we don't necessarily see our schools teaching social skills, conflict resolution, coping skills, right? But we know from his research that those soft skills are incredibly important. And he did research for the future success of jobs. Someone else is coming in, there we go. And how important these soft skills really are, right? So for me, he really pioneered and drove the importance of social emotional learning for our children, and in particular in schools. So I know social emotional learning is something that Little Einsteins also likes to kind of tap into as well. And Yesenia, if you want to maybe just mention real briefly how your school not only addresses the IQ, but also the EQ.
Sure. I think we have such a unique opportunity here. At Little Einsteins, our kids range from 1 year old to 4 at the moment, and the teachers are really trained on the EQ of little kids. We do a really good job at trying to, at the very earliest of these classrooms, is to start acknowledging what emotions are and what the name of those emotions are. And we're constantly at the school telling the kids, I see you feel sad. We start with books, we start with mimicking, we start with role playing. These types of things might seem insignificant, but over the course of time, and through, you know, consistencies and years of naming emotions and learning what it is to be empathetic and valuing when a child actually expresses their emotion and praising that, we truly believe that once they're done and they graduate little Einsteins and getting ready for kinder and pre-K, that they're going to be, you know, have a really good foundation for their emotional intelligence.
Beautiful. So Yesenia just stole my next slide, which is great.
Sorry.
No. This is exactly what we should be doing. At Little Einsteins, you guys are right on track. So we know what emotional intelligence is now, right? So how do we actually raise our children to have that high EQ that's so beautiful, right? So Yesenia already mentioned the number one basic first thing we can do with our young children is teaching them how to name and recognize their own emotions and feelings. And that's going to play into that self-awareness and self-regulation in our emotional intelligence wheel, right? So we cannot move on to coping with emotions or preventing meltdowns or all the things that we want unless we have this very basic thing of naming the emotions, helping our children understand that in their body. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So let's imagine you have a child and he or she's angry. It's time to clean up your toys. I don't want to clean up my toys. I want to keep playing, right? We've all been there probably. So what that looks like in a parenting moment is that you're saying, it's really hard for you to pick up your toys right now. You have a frown and it looks like you feel angry, right? So you're not doing anything yet besides giving them language to what they're feeling, right? So when you name that, you're giving them their emotional vocabulary to associate what they're feeling in their body. Oh, there's a name for it, right? So then they can start to remember, oh, I remember when I started to feel tense and hot and, oh, I'm angry, right? That is the very first step we need in emotional intelligence, is to be able to have that self-awareness to recognize in ourselves. So there's this saying we use a lot in psychology or therapy that comes from Daniel Siegel. Oops, sorry, one second. Lost my slide, there you go. Called Name It to Tame It. So I don't know about you, but when your child is escalating and they're really upset, sometimes the impulse is to say, stop crying, right? But we know, you've been there, if you've ever been crying and your partner walks in and is like, stop crying, that's not really going to de-escalate us, right? Versus, you seem really sad right now. You feel sad, right? Or if your partner came in and said, it seems like you're sad right now, that's way better than saying, stop crying, right? So sometimes we use that saying, if you can just remember that, just name the emotion. Is it going to stop it? Not necessarily, but it's probably not going to make it worse, like the stop, don't cry, that sort of thing, right? And then the last piece I'll say is, because it's not totally out of the realm of developmental appropriateness for children to hit or that sort of thing, they're still learning how to regulate what's appropriate, what's not. So I always say, you know, it's okay to feel angry, but you can't hurt my body, okay? So you're okaying the feeling, but you're setting a limit. And I think sometimes we as parents, we don't want to have these yucky feelings in our children. We don't want the anger, we don't want the sadness. We want them to just be happy and calm all the time, right? But it's really important for our children to know that it's okay to feel sad and it's okay to feel angry, right? But that doesn't mean you can throw your body on the ground or hurt someone, okay? So when we dig a little deeper into the social skills and the empathy of emotional intelligence, that's really about recognizing the emotions of other people. So you probably already know this. When you have babies, they're reading your facial cues, right? Especially that of the mother. You're smiling, you're, oh, hi, cuckoo, right? They're looking at your face and they're learning to recognize facial expressions. So that's why you have those baby books with faces and you see these toys, right? That's one of the very first EQ skills that babies learn. So once they've kind of mastered reading faces, then they can start to associate the emotions with other people. So when I see a frown on my mommy's face, I know that means that she feels mad, right? So they start to build that skill through facial expressions. And I always tell parents that you can practice this all day long, right? You can practice it while you're reading a book or watching a show. Just pointing out simply different characters, right? Mr. Bear looks angry. He's frowning, his eyebrows, right? I wonder why he's angry. And then taking it a step further, how would you feel if you were Mr. Bear? And this, I know it's a little bit harder for like our 1 and 2 year olds, but as we get older, our 2 and 3 year olds, 4 year olds, they can really start to practice this skill and start to learn these social skills and empathy piece. So when Yesenia and I were talking about this, we said, oh, you know, this is great, but we're all wearing masks, right? So how do you teach children to like pick up on other people's cues as if it's not hard enough, but then throw a mask and a pandemic on top of it, right? So I had told her that this is me in our first grade classroom. I went in there and I read a book on feelings, and then I had my mask on, right? And I said, do you think it's harder or easier to read people's emotions with a mask? And the first graders say, oh, harder, right? But I say, okay, let's practice. So I had my mask on the entire time and I was showing them happy and sad and angry, and they got every single one, because what they're doing is they're reading other parts of my body. They're reading my body language, my eyebrows, my tone, all of that, right? So just because we're in a pandemic and we're wearing masks, it's actually, you can almost sharpen that skill because it takes a little bit extra practice recognizing that, you know, in other people. So I know, Yesenia, I think your staff is wearing masks and that sort of thing, right? How are they coping with it with the children, or how's it going for them?
So when we created the protocol over the summer, there was a lot of debate of whether or not the children should be wearing masks. You know, luckily, as research has progressed, we, you know, are seeing that children aren't, you know, going to be significant carriers of the virus. So we decided, you know, the kids are not going to be wearing masks, although some do, and we don't, you know, certainly if a parent in a family wants to send their kids in a mask, that's fine. But we really played around with the idea of like, well, what do we do with the teachers? You know, they certainly have to wear masks. Some teachers actually have family members that, you know, they're trying to protect and keep safe. So we said, we're going to, you know, create essentially a rule where all teachers and staff members must wear masks. And teachers really took to it. Some are incredibly creative and have, you know, made their own masks with very kid-friendly things on them and characters on them, and others simply just have face shields, which are clear, and those ones actually are, you know, are with the younger babies, simply for that reason of babies especially need to see the smiles and the, you know, engagement, maybe arguably perhaps a little bit more consistently than the older ones do. So I think over time, as you said in the beginning, kids are very resilient, and now it's a no-brainer. Like, mommy wears masks, teacher wears masks, and it doesn't seem foreign to them anymore.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, they adjust very quickly. And like I said, if they learn tomorrow that the pandemic is over and they can go play with your friends, do you think that they would not start hugging and touching? No, they're going to jump right back into it. Whereas I think as adults, we might be like, oh, I don't know, you're too close to me. Kids are just going to hop right in there, right? So I'm glad that they've kind of adjusted to it.
Yes.
Okay, so this third piece of emotional intelligence is about coping skills. So that's our self-regulation. So once our children know kind of in their bodies, okay, they're starting to identify, this is what I feel when I'm frustrated, this is me sad, this is me surprised, right? They've started to pick that up. Now they have to kind of figure out, what am I gonna do with that? How do I regulate it? It's okay to feel angry, right? But that doesn't mean we can hit. So how are we gonna regulate that behavior? So really the way I like to teach this is you as the parent, you're the teacher, right? And you're so lucky because throughout your day, you're gonna have tons of opportunities to recognize and name your emotions for your children. and talk about coping skills. So much of parenting young children is about talking out loud. I mean, really, if you just remember that, because kids are only perceiving you and they're trying to make sense of their world. But if you're saying, oh, mommy forgot her purse in the car. Oh, that makes mommy feel angry, right? Or that makes me feel angry. Then they can start to kind of associate with all those different things, right? So some things I like to say, whoever can say this, I feel angry right now. Oh, I can feel it in my shoulders. My body's all tense. I'm going to go get a drink of water to help me feel calm. Now, you may be thinking all those things in your head, but if you don't say it out loud, the child doesn't learn from the experience, right? They just see mommy go happy to sad real quickly. They don't know why, they don't know how, right? Because they're still learning the skill. So the more that you can talk out loud about your own process, the more it's going to help them. So they're going to, one, what you've done for them is you've normalized the feelings. Oh, mommy feels angry too. It's okay, right? I can see it in her face. She told me what it feels like in her body. And then on top of it, what is she going to do to help feel calm? Okay, so I say, get a drink of water. And sometimes I'll say, mommy feels really angry right now. Should I throw my body on the ground and start kicking and screaming? And my kids go, no, right? I'm like, I feel angry. Should I start hitting someone? And of course they say no, right? But that's a lot of times, that's the impulse of our child. But if you kind of walk yourself through it, they realize, oh, well, that's not the right way to respond, right? So again, it's just kind of teaching those skills.
And just really quickly on that, I think it's also really important because the kids are actually in a socialized setting, and you know, we are a very small group of people who actually can send their children to school. I think it's really important to also try and do those things at home when you're with, like, your spouse, for example. If you and your spouse are getting angry at each other, you can use that same tactic to say, Daddy, I'm really mad at you right now, and I think I need to get a drink of water. I need to step away, because your children are going to have ears and they're listening and engaged in that entire environment. So I think it can also go that direction too. So when the kids are in a setting at school, when another kid is frustrating them or getting them sad or angry, they can have those that vocabulary.
Yes. Absolutely. And the other thing, you know, kids, they're very egocentric, which is, again, developmentally appropriate where they should be. But sometimes, so with that, they think everything revolves around them. So sometimes when they see you upset or they see mommy and daddy fighting, it's not totally out of the ordinary for a child to assume that they had something to do with that, or they internalize it, because that's where they're at. Their world is like this big, right? So that's why it's really important to talk out loud and say, I feel angry about this. It has nothing to do with you, you know, that sort of thing, because the kids are trying to just make sense of all that, right? So I like to talk here about coping skills for adults. And often when I talk with parents, they're like, I want to talk about my kid. I don't want to talk about me, right? But especially with young children, we can't really do that. You are the vehicle, for better or for worse, that your children are learning all this from. So it's really important that we as moms, I think we're all moms on here, parents, figure out what we do when we feel overwhelmed. So I kind of want to hear maybe from some of you, or Yesenia, you can chime in too. What are some of the stressors, or how do you handle it when your child's melting down, or what's stressful for you right now, kind of being a parent, would you say?
I can give an opportunity for other people on this to speak first, so we can give, you know, a moment if anyone wants to chime in first. Otherwise, I'm happy to speak to it.
Kelly, I can go ahead and add something if that's allowed. So what you've been saying has definitely hit home, only because my 5-year-old has always had extreme anxiety ever since she was a baby. And luckily within the last couple years, she was granted a resource teacher through the county here. And one of the things primarily that they've been working with her on is identifying her emotions, her big emotions, and the tactics and things that she can use to bring that big emotion down to a small emotion. So we've actually been working on that here at home, and listening in, I'm trying to do also that sort of coping mechanism. For instance, my daughter went to the eye doctors the other day. She's 5. She was able to verbally say, "I'm a little scared, Mommy, I'm a little scared." And so when she said that to me, I said, "Okay, what are some things that you can do? What is something that make you comfortable?" And she said, "I'm going to start breathing." So she did her 5 breaths, and what they were taught was to, blow out 5 candles on your finger. And so she did that, and so she was able to calm herself down.
Looks like she froze.
Well, I'll jump in there and say that is absolutely amazing. The fact that even she was able to name the emotion.
Going to play with something else. So this is really hitting home.
Thank you. Sorry, you cut out a little bit at the end, but I was just saying how amazing it was that, first of all, she was able to recognize the emotion. Honestly, even if she had done that and not done the coping skill, I would have been like, that's a victory, right? Because to be able to verbalize, I feel scared, wow. We have adults who can't even do that, right? We just jump from feeling fine to feeling, and they're not even aware of it in their body. So that's amazing that she had that. And then she immediately started using a coping skill that she learned. And you were able to kind of talk it through, right? Oh, you feel sad, or you feel scared. It's perfectly normal to feel scared right now. I would feel scared too. How can we cope with that? So that is so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I loved hearing that story. Anything else for people on maybe how you stay calm? How do you feel when your child melts down? What do you try and do? I know Yesenia and I talked a little bit about distraction. So it's really uncomfortable as parents to watch our child suffer. And if they're hurt or they're mad or whatever. So sometimes we're like, I don't know, Yesenia, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. When
distraction method.
Yeah, when Kelli and I were talking about all of this, I was like, oh my gosh, what I do with my kids is that I always distract them. Like when they're having a meltdown, I'll say, oh my gosh, look outside, you just missed Santa Claus. I'll try to make it really fun for them. And I guess maybe as to be a little bit, in depth here, perhaps that's how I naturally do things. When there's a stressful situation for myself, perhaps, it was, now that I was talking about it out loud, I was like, maybe that's what my go-to way is I try and tend to distract myself and focus on something different so that I could calm down. And it was really, really insightful when we had that conversation, Kelli, because I was actually thinking about it. And I said, you know what? That's like my go-to mechanism when things are chaotic and crazy. I try to distract myself. And maybe I can try now a new way. So, because life is hard, right? And you're going to have so many opportunities to get upset, to get frustrated, to get overwhelmed. And then we as parents and as adults can actually say, you know what? I have now 10 ways that I can handle this. Which path am I going to take? So it was just a really interesting thing to recognize in myself.
Yeah, and I don't think what we talked about is there's not necessarily anything wrong with distraction. And in fact, when I work with older kids, teenagers, or even adults, when we look at coping skills for adults, distraction is one of them. Some people like to talk it out. Some people like to do something different. So it's not that distraction is necessarily a bad one. So when we talk about coping skills for older children, I go on a walk. I put on music, right? And so you can kind of argue that you're kind of getting away from the feeling, and that's perfectly fine. The one thing though that Yesenia and I talked about is I think we need to be a little bit careful of always resorting to that because we're trying to appease our children and get rid of that yucky feeling for them. Because it's really important that our kids understand that they're going to feel sad, they're going to feel scared, they're going to feel angry, they're going to feel all those things. So if our gut is to always kind of make it go away, then we're actually missing out on an opportunity to let them feel those feelings. And better to feel them now. Feel like, what does disappointment feel like when you're 4 versus disappointment when you're 18, right? That's going to look different. So I bring up, you want to chime in, Lizette?
Yeah, I just had a question in regards to stressors for us as adults. As we talked earlier, Kelly, with us possibly moving to Puerto Rico soon, with two young kids, it's a very stressful situation for me to balance it all, anxiety. What is your recommendation as far as how to deal with the stress that I'm having and trying to cope myself, but then projecting a non-stressful situation for my children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think you're taking that in the right way, that you have to first yourself feel calm in order to, you can fake it to a certain extent. You can fake it till you make it, right? But kids ultimately, they do tend to pick up on that. I would say for the little ones, and I know some of you also have moved to Puerto Rico, so I'd like to kind of hear your opinion. But whenever we talk about big transitions, we talk about prepping the child in advance. And I suppose this could resonate with adults too, but just in regards to the kids, reading books about moving, going to new places, reading books about Puerto Rico, whatever that would look like, right? So you're prepping them in anticipation. And if they're looking at mommy and mommy's like, oh, I'm so excited to go, it's going to be such an adventure. Or if they're looking at mommy and mommy's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Right? They're going to say, oh, maybe it's not such a good thing, right? So I think you're very right in kind of getting comfortable with it and working on yourself. What is it that you're anxious about? What are your calm down strategies? How do you feel good? How do you cope? And just being really clear on that. And then I think that's going to kind of project onto your children. I'm curious, I know some other people are transplants, if that's the right word.
Yeah, I think the majority of the people that I can see here that are attending have actually moved from the States recently to Puerto Rico. We did the same thing 2 years ago. So, and just to give a little bit of insight, so Lisette, the one that just spoke, is actually my sister. So she's moving to Puerto Rico with her family in about a month or so. And I just wanted to speak to how incredibly stressful that can be. And we all have been there. We've all done that. And I think what I take most pride in is that Little Einstein, when I moved here 2 years ago, I took hold of Little Einsteins as a real place of comfort. A lot of women had already done what I did 2 years ago. They moved, they put their kids in school. And I take so much pride in knowing that Little Einsteins is a community of women and families who are there to support other women and other families. And one of the reasons why this is so important is because one of the mottos at school is tune into the children and also tune into the parents. And that's something that's just kind of like an umbrella over the school. As far as the children goes, we have a very consistent routine. So whenever you start school, whether it's in the fall or the spring or just randomly throughout the year when you move here, your kids will be enrolled in a system that's very consistent, that's really easy for them to understand. Small rooms, small student to children ratio. I'm sorry, student to teacher ratio, and a very consistent message of everything that the children and family, whatever they're feeling, is okay. We're soon going to launch a parent portal in our website, which allows parents to log in and to kind of talk to each other. Hey, do you want to have a play date together? Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Hey, let's connect over coffee. So it will give the parents an opportunity to engage on that level as well. So I think for anyone who is planning to come to Puerto Rico or who has already been here and done that, I think the power is just coming together as a community. And so Lisette, as you plan your family to move down here, just know that there's going to be an amazing support system and a lot of resources for you, as well as other parents. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Yesenia. How amazing. I mean, having a supportive community is everything. And I know that you always hear that. It takes a village, right? But I mean, it really does. What we're talking about right now, this is hard stuff, right? So if you have resources, if you have a community, if you have people you can bounce off of, if you have other moms to say, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, right? That can go really, really far. And you have a built-in community, which is already amazing. So I'm going to jump down to this point about being a good enough mother. So I love this. It's a little bit off topic, but I just can't not talk about it because it's so important. So this was coined back in 1953 by a pediatrician and psychoanalyst. And I'm going to read just a little bit about his observations. So Winnicott observed thousands of babies and their mothers, and he came to realize that babies and children actually benefit when their mothers fail them in manageable ways. So we're not talking about abuse and that sort of thing, but failing them in manageable ways. He says, the process of becoming a good enough mother to our children happens over time. When our babies are infants, we try to be available constantly and we respond to them immediately. As soon as they cry, we feed them, we snuggle them, we change their diapers. In other words, we do whatever it takes to help them feel better. This is important because it teaches them to feel secure. However, that cannot be sustained forever, nor should it be. This was his point. He believed that the way to be a good mother is to be good enough. Children need their mother to fail them in order to understand that we live in an imperfect world. Every time we don't hear them calling us right away, every time we don't give them our undivided attention, every time we feed them a dinner they don't want to eat, that was me last night, every time we make them share when they don't want to, we are getting them ready to function in a society that will frustrate and disappoint them on a regular basis. So
that's a really amazing quote. It's certainly a deep quote too. If I could just speak just about something really quickly. So I see it all the time with parents, especially new parents who are just sending their kids into school for the very first time. Like maybe they're sending their 15-month-old to preschool and they're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I should be with my kid. And are they ready? Are they not? Should they go half day? Should they go full day? There's so much anxiety around it. And I see it all the time where I tell parents, give them 2 weeks. Like as soon as you say goodbye to your child the very first day, there might not be any tears because that child doesn't know what's happening. Second day, you're going to break down, throw a tantrum. And then as parents and as mothers, we feel so guilty and so responsible for that emotion. And what the teachers do so well at Einstein's is that they always have this motto, mommies and daddies always come back. And they're constantly saying, when you get up from nap time, mommy and daddy will be there. So it's like this constant language at the preschool to basically just, reassure the kids that mommy and daddy can go away, but they will come back. And by week 2, it's so cute to see the kids say, bye-bye, mommy, bye-bye, daddy, and just, run into school. So I think that, it's a real big deal for us to be in that emotional state with our kids.
Absolutely.
You're saying if I can add something, I remember I was one of those moms that had the anxiety of sending my kids to school, and my sister was completely opposite, felt very confident that my niece was going to go and be quite comfortable and happy. But the one thing I really noticed about Little Einsteins that I didn't have here was what my sister would tell me about Little Einsteins was the warmth and nurturing, almost like motherly attitude that your teachers at Little Einsteins have, as opposed to the school that I sent my daughter to, very cold, very guarded, and I felt like, oh, I want that for my daughter. I want what Little Einsteins was giving my niece. So I was really happy to hear that my sister and my niece had that experience with Little Einstein, and now I'm grateful that going there, my younger daughter could possibly have that same experience as she enters preschool.
Yeah, I think it's a really common thing for parents to say, oh my gosh, I love the teachers at Einstein's. And we try to, as a board, to support teachers as well, because they're human beings too that don't necessarily have to go above and beyond, and they do. And so for that reason, I really do recommend, like, everybody who moves to Puerto Rico to go to Einstein's, because as a mom, it, honest to God, was like sending my kids to my aunt's house or to my sister's house. It felt that warm. And, hats off to the teachers there for that.
Amazing. So yeah, I think separation anxiety, leaving your kid for the first time with a baby, I mean, it doesn't get any, I drop my kindergartner off and I'm like, oh my God, right? It doesn't get really any easier, but realizing that you don't want to take away that struggle, that uncomfortable feeling, you're actually going to deprive them if you just shelter them and you give them this like bubble life where they only feel happiness, then life is going to hit them really hard later. And that's a whole nother conversation. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I just knowing as a mom, it's okay. And in fact, you're actually helping them more if they have those uncomfortable, because you know what, they're going to be fine. We already know that. Little Einsteins, I'm sure they're going to be fine. They're going to be taken care of. They're going to be loved. And that's what you as a mom, I think, need to, we always need to remind ourselves of that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Another really quick thing. Sorry, I just want to say, what's really great too is that we have a software system at school that actually allows parents to be engaged with their kids all day. Like we said, notifications like so-and-so was content today. They ate all of their chicken and peas and rice today. Here's a picture of what they're doing. So I feel like in that sense, having that, like
reassurance.
time-stamped reassurance that their child is okay really helps parents,
Yeah.
move forward in their day.
So this is just a little image I got from Instagram that I liked. When our child is feeling uncomfortable, or in particular, I think this is more for like anger and meltdowns and that sort of things, just different things you can do to keep yourself calm. I think for me, recognizing that if you have a 2-year-old, they're not like manipulating you. They're not doing this on purpose. They really lack the skills and they're learning, right? So these are just kind of quick tips I liked, different things that you can do if you're feeling overwhelmed by your child's behavior. So going on to those coping skills, I know Lizette mentioned some, which is amazing. How we teach our children to self-regulate. So how often do we say, calm down, relax? But what does that actually mean? And then sometimes even as an adult, I don't even know what that means to me, right? So it's really important that we have those skills and that we teach them to our children. So here we go again with Instagram versus real life. On the left, that is a picture of my daughter's room, but I would say that we didn't use it all the time. This is what we call a calm down corner, and I'll let Yesenia talk about it at Little Einsteins. It does not have to be this precise. If you want a calm down corner, I can give you resources for that. But basically what it is when your child's feeling overwhelmed, they go and they kind of have a space to kind of re-regulate, right? So they can go up there and say, I'm feeling sad, so what can I do? And if you see on the left, it's kind of hard to see, but on that poster, it says my calming strategies. So it's take a drink of water, read a book, hug a lovey, right? So sometimes in the calm down corner, we put different things that children can do if they're feeling overwhelmed, a stress ball, a puzzle, coloring, right? So this is kind of the ideal scenario. It doesn't necessarily work every time. I think the important thing here is that your children have coping skills. So let's go back to it. You feel really sad right now. It's okay to feel sad. I can tell you're crying. Would you like a hug? Would you like to go hug a lovey? Would you like to go get a drink of water with me? Right? So while you're doing that, you're teaching them, okay, you're feeling the feeling, that's okay. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to cope with it? Right? So Yesenia, that's yours on the right, right? How does Little Einsteins use their
Yes.
space?
So this is a room in Little Einstein's classroom. It's our calm down corner. So what we do is actually, sometimes this can be viewed as a negative space, like a timeout space. Oh no, you did something wrong. You need to be in timeout. And that is certainly not the path that we're trying to take, the kids down on at Einstein. So this is a time in corner. And this is also a corner where kids are taught to put themselves there. No one is telling them to go. So for example, if Leia, my daughter, was feeling sad and angry and she hit somebody or something, the teacher would say, Leia, do you want to go in the time in corner? Do you want to go in the calm down space? And she will say yes or no. And if she says yes, then they go together to go to this corner, and then they kind of talk about what happened. And they ask her, are you ready to talk about what happened? And if she says no, they'll respect it. And if she wants to talk about it, then she will. So it's just a nice space to have in classrooms, we think, to give the child the option to talk, not talk, or to calm down, or to not, participate at the moment, and, kind of come back when they're ready to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have it at our, we have some version of it at our preschool and kindergarten. And at minimum, if you just have what the emotion was, that's, like I said, that's a victory for me, right? Because they have to realize, okay, I felt angry, right? When I hit so-and-so. Sometimes they'll be really insightful and say, I was feeling left out and they were including me, right? It's amazing what children can actually, when they're given the opportunity to talk about their emotions, what they can actually say, right? So, again,
Jessie has a question.
Yeah.
Question, kind of more of a comment of like somewhere I get really stuck with my kids. Sorry, my internet went out, so I'm on my phone if it's shaky, sorry. I have a 1 and a 2-year-old, and sometimes we're always dealing with my 2-year-old's very emotional, and he can, if the baby takes something of his or is touching something, looking the wrong way, he goes nuts, and it's so devastating to him, and he loses it. I see he tries so hard to restrain himself, but sometimes he just hits her. So then I feel, if I'm by myself, I feel, well, like she's the victim. Do I go to her and pick her up because she's crying? But he's still so dysregulated and emotional, and like I need to protect her, and I just feel so overwhelmed in those moments. The only thing I have found that works recently, but it's not an in the moment thing, which is where I need some help, but I like happened upon it, and it made sense to me afterwards that we played a game where I was pretending to be him and he was the baby, and he would take the lovey away, and then I would do what he does, like kind of acting out his meltdown, but without the hitting. Like, and I would say, I'm so mad, I want to hit right now, but I know I can't. And so I hit the floor, hit the pillow, and he cracks up hysterically laughing. It's hilarious. And I was like, oh, this is like empathy. Like he gets that I hear him. But in the moments, we've been giving him a timeout, and now I'm feeling so bad about it like this, because I've been just a matter of practicality. I put him in his crib so then I could tend to the crying baby. Yeah. I don't know. But I do think it comes across to him as punitive.
Yes.
And I want him to also understand his emotions. I just get overwhelmed.
Absolutely. I think everyone can resonate with that. What we're talking about is like the ideal scenario. If you're just with one child and you have all the time in the world to talk about their emotions, but then there's real life. You have 2 kids, one's crying, one's screaming, right? What does that look like? And I don't necessarily think timeouts, I tend to use them when you're crossing a boundary, or if the child is really out of control and you have another one and you're just staying calm. You're saying, it's okay to feel angry. I know you're upset, but we can't hit, right? So I'm going to put you right here so I can go make sure sister's safe, right? It is really a timeout, because the behavior, there does need to be some punitive, because that's a boundary, right? Again, it's okay to feel upset, but we can't hit. I think the important thing, this is the real tricky thing, is how you as a mom stay calm in that moment. Because what you want to show, if you just escalate, that's going to, obviously escalate. That's the hardest thing, I think. I think it's perfectly appropriate if you're playing 2-on-1 and you've got 2 children, and a timeout, I think, is served when there is boundary crossing with hitting and biting and that sort of thing, right? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important how, like, the tone you're taking, like, so what I'm doing, but I'm trying to be conscious of not making it necessarily a punishment, but a safety issue.
Yes.
So Jessie, I read, I honest to God don't remember where I read this, but it was recent. And it was saying that a lot of toddler tantrums happen because they are seeking attention from their mother. And so I found, at least with Leia and Arya, they're not similar ages, but they are 17 months apart, but their sister Arya is just a little bit older. I did find that when I played and gave them each or together my undivided attention, and it's fun, it fills them for a long time. Like, it fills them up, and then they're like okay to play like by themselves. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of like, okay, put my phone down. I need to go on their level and start playing. Sometimes I don't want to do that, and it's actually quite annoying. So that's when I go back to like, what are the resources that I have so that I can actually participate with my kids when they're around in a really engaging way that they feel filled.
Right.
And that's just it's a very hard puzzle to, to do at this moment in time.
Yes. I 100% agree with you. It's just like,
Getting pulled in a lot of different directions with your kids is a lot. It's so overwhelming.
and I just feel like I'm inevitably like neglecting one when I'm with the two. And it's like, my son usually kind of wins because he's a little bit more vocal and attached. My baby's a little bit more easygoing, but then I'll feel bad about it. I'm always handing her off to someone.
Mom guilt is a real thing.
Oh.
But you know what? And like, honestly, like just sometimes being a part of a community that tells you you're doing a great job and you're maybe not a perfect mother, but you're certainly a good enough mother, and seeking out resources like this, you should really give yourself a pat on the back and
Sure.
I'm
all about the Winnicott good enough mother. I think it's everything. Right? Be kind of perfectionistic or like high achieving kind of person. It really can like frame things in a way that makes you feel good.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you like that. Let me just make sure we're all on mute here. 1 second. Okay, so jumping back into kind of the EQ, and this is the final piece. How we increase our children's emotional intelligence is really developing their motivation and their resilience. So this comes down to growth mindset. If you've heard of that before, that's Carol Dweck's work out of Stanford. And really what she showed us is that kids with growth mindsets or adults with growth mindsets understand that we can grow our skills. We can grow our intellectual capacity by practicing something. It's not fixed. So we'll see it in like our elementary school kids or our middle or high school. I'm not a math person. I'm not good at math. That's kind of a fixed mindset. You think like you're not going to get any better at it. It's a set skill. When the reality is, if we teach our children to have that growth mindset, that it's practice, it's struggling, it's motivation, that's how we grow and we learn. So like everything I'm saying, you can be the tool here. So one, we need to let our children struggle. I think we've kind of tapped on that a little bit, but also modeling for them when you make mistakes, when you struggle with something. My older daughter asked me to braid her hair, French braid it. I didn't know how. So I said, oh man, this is frustrating. I'm trying. I don't know how to do this. You know what? I'm going to practice. So I went on YouTube and like, it's still not great. But the point is, she saw something that I didn't know how to do. And instead of saying, let's go ask, Auntie to do this for you, I showed her, I don't know how to do this. I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to search something out and I'm going to practice it, right? So as our children are learning new skills, tying shoes, riding bikes, writing their name, right? It's very common for them to get frustrated because we just want it to work, right? So they need to be able to sit with that discomfort, just like we as adults can. So one of the most beautiful sayings I like is yet, the power of yet. So I can't do that yet, right? So even if my child says, oh, I can't do it, well, I can't do it yet, right? We need to practice it. We need to struggle with it a little bit. So this is really about that growth mindset and modeling making mistakes. When you make mistakes, you're talking out loud. Oh, mommy put the wrong thing in the soup. Oh, that's frustrating. Oh, we all make mistakes. And it's funny because my daughters have already picked up on that language and they'll say, it's okay to make mistakes. And what a beautiful thing for a child to learn, because they're going to make mistakes. Absolutely. And to know that that's just part of the process. We struggle with it, right? So that's really that growth mindset that we want to teach our children. And I think where we get in our own way here is, again, that urge to overparent. I really like this quote on the side. My kids are learning how to fall. My job is to kiss the boo-boos, not prevent them. And this is my daughter here with a failures help me grow shirt on. And really, it's like a reminder for me. When I see her struggling, I need to view that as this is how she learns. This is how she grows. And we used to have the helicopter parents. Now we have the lawnmower parents who just want to push through every obstacle for their child and make it nice and cozy and comfy, right? but that's not going to teach them that resilience, that motivation, that pushing, right? So this is probably one of the areas that I struggle with the most, because I want to make my children's life beautiful and, you know, happy and all that, but they need to struggle. So we can't swoop in all the time. I'm watching my child learn how to read, and she's sounding out a word, and it's like taking forever. So I just want to say the word for her, right? I just want to move on. That's over-parenting, right? We need to let them sit in there and struggle a little bit while they're working on these skills. So we've kind of.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yep.
Are you guys hearing me?
Yep.
Yes. Hi, Celeste.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you. I think the school is amazing and I love this discussion and I've learned so much already. This is thrilling.
Awesome.
And Lisette, welcome, honey, and good luck. I just wanted to say one thing about emotion. I mean, I'm making notes about everything you've said, but one thing that always comes to my mind is emotions tend to have their own heat and their own duration, you know, and the last thing I ever wanted was for Freya to be think emotions are bad or afraid of them or like, oh, that's yucky bad, you know, because they tend to just out themselves, you know, like you sit down in response to your question earlier, I sit with her while she's losing it, you know, acknowledge what she's feeling and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, totally, I get it, totally, you know. And usually, you know, without moving toward addiction, which is what we do as adults, because we're just as afraid of emotion as they are, you know, it will just out itself like, whoop, done crying, or, oh, you know, the anger is past, I'm over it. You know, it's kind of this force that is us but isn't us that wants to just express itself. And so I find, you know, just the kind of sitting and waiting and letting the heat pass and teaching her that has helped me a lot, you know, because we're no more advanced than they are, you know, just slightly, just barely. I look at her and I'm like, yeah, that looks like me when I have PMS.
That's such a good point.
Yes. And in sitting in that, Celeste, I really like that, because what you're teaching your child is that, yes, I feel yucky. It's not going to last forever. These emotions pass, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important that they feel that. And then they know, I also got through it. Wow, it's not so scary after all, right?
Up and out, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for saying.
With that being said, everyone, we are going to have to come to a closing, but I wanted to just tell you that I have written down every single one of your names in a hat, and whoever's name I pick out will actually receive a self-care gift basket. So I did not put my own name, but Kelli, you're included, and everyone else who's on this as well. So Lisette, Celeste, Jesse, and Felipe. So everyone's name's in a hat. I'm not looking at who's gonna win. And the winner of the self-care gift basket, and again, thank you so much, Kelli, and everyone for attending. I really appreciate it. Anyway, so the winner of today's gift basket is Celeste. Congratulations. You'll be receiving a gift basket from me by the beginning of the week.
Let's all share it.
Yeah. So thank you again, Kelli.
Thank you.
It was awesome to have you a part of this conversation and as a partner of Little Einsteins Preschool. We hope that when you come to Puerto Rico, you can come visit us.
Absolutely. I can't wait to meet all you all in person when this pandemic's over.
Great. Well, thank you again. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kelli. Bye, everybody.
You're welcome. Bye.
There's no